We mentioned yesterday that when the Torah had said in last week's parsha that they had left the Ur Kasdim, they left the location which was called the Kiln of Kasdim. It's alluding to the miracle which Avram Avinu had experienced, that he was thrown into the kiln because he would not bow to the idol, and how his brother died, and all that followed. Did Avram Avinu have an obligation to give his life and not to bow? A Jew, although we normally say that human life supersedes the Torah, but the three exceptions where we say that one must give his life. Gilui Arayshit has done Avodah Zorah. The three cardinal sins: adultery, incest, murder, and idolatry. That trumps a person's life. So a Jew, the Torah says that a Jew must sanctify Hashem's name by giving his life. A non-Jew has no obligation. So Avram, that he did not bow to the idol at the cost that he would have to give his life, he had no obligation. Nevertheless, he chose to give his life. That was his prerogative. But you'd say, he had to give his life. Again, that's what we call, because he chose. The one who took his life was Nimrod. He himself has no obligation to protect his life. He can't take his life. But in terms of choosing not to bow, and as a result of that, his life will be taken, he's not in violation of anything. But he had no obligation. He could have bowed, but he chose not to bow. What was the value of not bowing? So we had said yesterday, Hashem had said, this location is not for you, that since you want to do my will at this very exacting level, at this advanced level, you must leave that location and you'll go to the one that I will show you. That's the Lech Lecha. The Midrash says something interesting. Every morning in Psukei de Zimra, at the end of the parsha of Vayivorach David, we say, Atu Hashem Elokim Asher B'chata B'Avrom. You are the God who chose Avram. Avram was before the name change. V'otzeisum u'kazdim. And you took him out of the kiln of Kasdim. V'samta shmo Avraham. And after you took him out of the kiln of Kasdim, you placed his name to be Avraham. He was no longer Avram. You found his heart faithful to you. Right? We say this every morning, if you don't skip it. Okay? Atu Hashem Elokim Asher B'chata B'Avram. You chose Avram v'otzeisom u'kazdim. When did you choose him? When you took him out of the kiln of Kasdim, v'samta shmo Avraham, and you set his name to be Avraham, because you found his heart faithful to you. Now, there's an obvious question. When he came out of the kiln, he was still Avram. When did he have the name change of Avraham from had the hay added? That's only when he was circumcised, when he was 99 years old. When he was Nur Kasdim, he was 75 years old, a little less. But yet we say every morning in the Pasuk, when you took him out of the Ur Kasdim, you placed his name to be Avram because he found his heart faithful to you. Just a simple. And what do we say? What's the paragraph after what we say? The Chorasim Obris. And then he entered into a covenant with him to give him the land of Canaan, Amori, Perizi, the 7 nations of Canaan. Because he found his heart to be faithful to him, he entered into a covenant that the land is his. The land of the Canaanites will give it to him. But this was only after the circumcision. It wasn't that. He only became Avram after he was circumcised. And he only was given the land, even though it says here, Lech Lecha. He walked the land to acquire it, which we can discuss in a moment. What's the verse in Shir Hashirim? Rabbi Brachia Posach, Ochos Lanu Ketano. We have a young sister, Ochos. V'shnai me'elo. She's young, and her breasts haven't yet developed. Shodai me'elo. V'ma kosu b'tabir. What is Shlomo speaking about? Avraham. This pasuk is referring to Avraham Avinu. K'shlicho Nimrod l'toch kivshin ha'ish. When Nimrod cast Avram into the fiery kiln, Kitano, what does it mean Kitano? Adayin lo osel HaKadosh Baruch Hu nisim. Avram at that point did not experience miracles yet. The first miracle he experienced in his life when he came out of that kiln, that was the first miracle. That's Kitano. He's a minor, young. Lom Nikra Ochos. Why is he called Ochos? Ochos normally means sister. She'icha ha'olam l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the commentary in the Medrash says, Icha means when you have two pieces of cloth separated and you sew them together, it's called Icha. He brought things together. It's like a person, when you sew, sometimes you have to tear and then you sew. Therefore he's called Ochos, because he was the one who repaired the world. The world was asunder, God, spiritually speaking, and he started to reconstruct the world. For Shadayim Eilo, what does it mean? He had no breasts. Shadayim Lohei Lovonim. Shadayim usually allude to a person has children. A woman, she nurses. What should we do to our sister? What do I say to him? The day that Avram was thrown into the kiln, what did Hashem say to him at that time? If he's like a wall who could deflect all kinds of battles, I will build an edifice of silver on it, because a wall is something very strong, a strong foundation. If he's willing to give his life, like a wall, the wall is able to withstand many attacks. Hashem, and he's willing to give his life, although he had no obligation, to sanctify my name. I will build upon him this edifice of silver. Well, what edifice of silver will I build upon him? Eli Yisrael. The Jewish people will emanate from him, will descend from him. Shekroim Kanfe Yona, quotes supposed to Tilim. The Jewish people are compared to the wings of a dove, Nechba Bakesef, which are coated with silver. It's a pasuk in Tilim. The Jewish people are compared to the wings of a Yona, Nechba Bakesef. The Gemara tells us something interesting. The Yona, the dove, is the only bird that only has one mate. Every other bird has multiple mates. The Yona, the dove, once it has one mate, it's dedicated to that mate, it does not give up, does not leave that mate to engage with another mate. The Jewish people only have one relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, they're compared to the Yona. That's number one. Another characteristic of the dove, the Gemara says that every other bird, when you want to slaughter it, it actually fights with the one who's trying to grab its neck. The Yona, the moment it realizes it wants to be taken over, it extends its neck to be slaughtered, that its neck to be cut. The Jewish people, when it comes to Kiddush Hashem, they have the characteristic, they don't withstand, they give their lives. So the Jewish people have that characteristic of the Yona. Another thing, the Yona is the only bird that's able to fly with one wing. When it's attacked by another bird, the dove is able to fly with one wing and ward off the attacker with its other wing. What does that mean? So we have the mitzvahs that when we function, our mitzvahs, we fight off and deflect the attack with the mitzvahs we have. Just saying. So that's kesef. the wing is covered with silver, then delicate. But if you're not like a choma, you're like a plank of wood. In dal, what's delis? In dalhu milimsa nafsho outushem. If you're too weak, too impoverished, and you're not willing to give your life for Kiddush Hashem, not eres. I will put there a plank of cedar wood. Matsura shebeluach eres. If a person has some kind of engraving on a wooden plank of wood, it could become smudged. It could become actually removed easily. I will not pay any attention. Avram will be an ordinary person if he's not willing. He has no obligation, but he's no different than anyone else. Avram said, "HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ani choma. I'm like the wall that deflects every type of attack. Limsa nafshi akdusha shivcha. I'm willing to go into the kiln, to give my name, to sanctify your name. Lo ani b'levod." And Avram, when he went in, he says, "It's not only myself. Elo v'shodai kimigdolos. My breasts are like towers." What does that mean? B'nei borav chanayim shol v'azario. And this is where Chaim Voloshin writes, every Jew throughout history who has the ability to give his life to sanctify Hashem's name, that characteristic, that moment of clarity, emanates from Avram Avinu. Because we're part of his gene pool, we have his spiritual genealogy. Therefore, every Jew has that ability at that moment, give his life. And he says, my descendants, the 10 martyrs who were murdered by the Romans. The reasons why they gave their lives for that, although they could have escaped or whatever it is. Therefore, I will be in the eyes of Hashem, Kamotze Shalom, one who's achieved peace. And because he was willing to give his life, therefore he merited to come out of the kiln. But he was associated with his father, who was an idol maker, and he served those idols. Hashem said to him, Lech l'cha mi'artzva. You must leave. You can't be associated. Because you achieved this, and you're sanctified by my name, by identifying by who you are, therefore you can't be associated with these idolaters. Therefore, that's the left hook. That's the midrash. So let's understand now the pasuk we say. Atu Hashem Elokim Hashem Chatu Avram. When did Hashem choose Avram to be that special person that ultimately to have the potential to become Avraham? He only became Avram when he was 99 years old. Right now, he's 75 years old. But he chose Avram when he took him out of the kivshon, of the kiln, the Samtishma Avraham. The dynamic for Avraham already was set at that moment. Why? Because he found his heart faithful to him. And therefore, what's the next paragraph? To give him the land of Canaan, 7 nations. Now, what was Canaan? When we went to Canaan, there was an obligation. We had to annihilate all the nations of Canaan. As there's a mitzvah to annihilate Amalek, because they epitomize evil, the nations of Canaan, they epitomized evil, they had to be removed from the land. And they all had to be killed. But why was he given that task? That because he really identified himself, that he is the representation of Kedusha, of spirituality, and he proved himself to become Avraham because his heart was faithful to Hashem. Therefore, Hashem entered into the covenant to give him the land of Canaan, and that means to destroy that evil which Canaan represents. That's the understanding, based on what we're talking right now.
Why wasn't the hay in Abraham added now after Mirakasim as opposed to after he had a bris and when he was 99?
It's better. Why wasn't he given the bris now?
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Right. This is not the hay. The hay came together with the bris. Right now, what's the halacha? If a non-Jew, an Arab, the Gemara refers to Arabs as a circumcised Arab, what is he? Nothing. It's cosmetic. Has no bearing on his essence, on an Arab or not, or a non-Jew. Avram, there's a question which they ask. We know that it says that Avram kept the Torah in its entirety before it was given. So why did he circumcise himself?
Oh,
We said that he even kept Erev Tavshilim. Even rabbinic fences he kept. So if he knew ultimately, because it was transmitted to him that there's going to be a mitzvah of circumcision, he should have circumcised himself. Why didn't he? So the answer is, we know the Gemara tells us that greater is a person who performs when he's obligated than when he performs the mitzvah when he's not obligated. So since Avraham Avinu knew ultimately he would be obligated to fill the mitzvah, if he would have himself circumcised now, he's going to circumcise himself in a non-obligated state. So the value of the circumcision wouldn't have the same impact on him. So therefore, he waited until he was going to be commanded by Hashem at the age of 99 to circumcise himself. That's one of the answers given.
oh, but then this is you could say the same thing about going to the kiln. It was pikuach nefesh. He had no obligation to do that. Why would he do that?
No. Again, this was the only time he was given that. This is the watershed moment. If you give your life, that tells us who you are. So the way we explained was this way. We discussed many times the outer foreskin is only an indication of the impurity which exists within the person. If a person is at a level that he already is ready to make the transition from the negative side to the positive side, and only God can make that evaluation, that you're ready for real time, now you're ready to circumcise. So when you remove the outer foreskin, that affects internally who you are. That identifies who you are. But if a person is a wolf in sheep's clothing, if your essence is intermeshed with evil, removing the foreskin has no relevance to this, has no bearing on it. So Avraham Avinu was not at a level yet advanced sufficiently to have that transition take place within him. Because what he did now, ultimately, the dynamic was set that after he goes through multiple levels of advancement, he'll be ready for real time. When did he achieve that moment? At the age of 99. Now, at the age of 99, he's given the mitzvah of Milah, and now he transitions from Avram to Avraham. But when was that dynamic set? To have this new potential when he went into the kiln. And therefore, he's given that responsibility, ultimately, to expunge Canaan from the nations of Canaan because they are the representation of evil. And because you no longer represent that, therefore, you're given that task to establish Kedusha, Hashem's presence in the world. We had mentioned the Medrash that Avram was the equivalent of a flask of perfume in a cemetery. Hashem says, if you want to be effective, it's not here. This is not the location. I want you to go among the living and not be among the dead. In terms of your level of achievement here, although it says he took with him the converts that he converted to monotheism, but we're talking about this as a pittance in terms of what he's able to do. Leave the cemetery, go away from the dead, go among the living. There you're going to make a difference. You're going to impact the world. And that's the land of Canaan. But he could have said, what was it? We'd explained what was the difference between Avram and Noach. Noach, as we discussed last week, needed hand-holding. And ultimately he failed with the generation of the great flood. The world was destroyed. Avram Avinu was self-motivated and he succeeded. And he was able to achieve a level of accomplishment that the world was not destroyed. And that's the Mishnah Pirkei Avos. There were 10 generations from Noach to Avram. V'Avram kibel schar keneged kulam. And Avram received reward for all 10 generations. What they were meant to achieve, he received reward for what they didn't achieve. So Rabbeinu Yonah mentioned a day or two ago, because Avram was able to achieve within the spiritual realm to give the world its value, what they were meant to achieve. And therefore he received reward versus those 10 generations. Why was Avram at that special level? So we explained, and it's mentioned in the Chazal, at what age did Avram come to recognize that God is the creator, that the world has one being, one omnipotent being. It's not multi-spiritual powers. What brought him to that realization? So we said many times, Avram did not discover Hashem. Avram had questions. And he asked the questions. He engaged in dialogue. He wasn't satisfied with the answers. Everybody else was satisfied. Why wasn't Avram satisfied? Because Avram himself, Alan, when you drink coffee, you sip.
I'm slobbering.
I hear it. So Avram looked at the world, and he sees a world which borders on the infinite. It has levels of accommodation which is not to be believed. He has a body which functions. He has an intellect. And he has a question. Who's the master of the universe? The words in Chazal, mi bala bira. What did he see? Rabira dolekis. He sees a citadel illuminated. You have a 10,000 hotel room. It has 10,000 rooms. Every one is illuminated. That means it's functioning. There's somebody causing this to happen. Mi balabiro. Who's the master of this universe? And he kept asking the question. And he shopped it around all over the world. Nimrod, all of them, all the great theologians. They all had answers. But the answer wasn't sufficient to Avram Avinu, which we'll discuss in a moment. Until finally, Hashem says to Avram, Ani balabira. I am the master of the universe. Because Avram himself did not compromise his quest for truth to accept what everybody else was saying. Therefore, the source of all truth said to him, Ani balabira. I am the master of the universe. That's how Avram came. So Avram came upon God because he wasn't willing to compromise his standard of truth. But why? Avram Avinu understanding that he is the beneficiary of whoever this creator is, whoever brought this existence, and he's this beneficiary, he has to dedicate his life to express that appreciation, then every aspect of his life will be dedicated to that benefactor, him being the beneficiary. Unless it's clear to him beyond any doubt who that beneficiary, who that benefactor is, he's not dedicating his life. Therefore, he wasn't interested in an answer. He was interested in the answer. And when Hashem said, Adi balabiro, now he understood who he's going to dedicate his life to. Because he had that level of appreciation, which was one of a kind, to be appreciative. That's the Hakar Satov we spoke about. As a result of that, Avram is told by Hashem, even his father gave him over to be killed if he doesn't bow. So evidently there was no love lost between him and Terach. But yet he says, leave your homeland, leave your birthplace, leave your family. These people, they want to put him through a grinder. They want to destroy him. You'd be more than happy to flee from there. Avram wasn't so easy. It was a test. Lechba was a test. What was the test? The test was Avram Avinu understood the only reason why they wanted to put him to death and to kill him, his family, his countrymen, because they didn't understand. But he believed that he had the ability to bring them to that moment of truth that they would understand. So Hashem is saying to abandon these people and forget about them. But what about him? There's a basis for Hakar Satov to his father, to his family, to his countrymen. The core of his being is Hakar Satov. He's a beneficiary of everything, of the people, his peers. And Hashem says, pick yourself up and leave. He doesn't ask a question, picks himself up and leaves. Because this was his characteristic and quality of being, to have that level of appreciation because he's a beneficiary, for him to pick himself up to leave was a Herculean task. But he picked himself up. He did not ask Hashem. You know what he should have said to Hashem? Hashem, give me one more try. Let me see if it works. Didn't say a word. Hashem says, no, there's no future. He picked himself up immediately. So the test was not, does he go, doesn't he go? Does he question Hashem? Do you go into the kill or not? That's my decision. Because I understand what God is. I'm not willing to live a lie. I prefer to die for the sake of truth. Therefore, that's the position why they don't count the Urkazdim as one of the 10 tests. Every other test we'll see in a moment was you don't question Hashem. He was told to go there. What happens? He's in Canaan for 3 months. All of a sudden, he's struck with a famine. He could have said to Hashem, hey, you promised me the world. It turns out to be a disaster. What's going on over here? Avram did not ask a question. The Akedah, what was the Akedah? Your son will be the future, the stars of the heaven, so on and so forth. At the age of 37, now Yitzchak is 37 years old. He's told to slaughter him, to sacrifice him. Hashem, how do we reconcile this? Avram did not ask the question. Then I asked the question. He was totally negated to Hashem's will. It's not for me to ask. I don't ask that kind of question. Every one of the 10 tests was he did not ask a question. He was totally subsumed and dedicated and submitted to God's will without asking a question.
Man, so just some further clarification. So
is numerically is 248. When he became Avram, there's many levels of what this means, what that hay represents. Until he was Avram, he did not have full control of every aspect of his being. When he became Avram, now you're fully in control of every aspect of your being. You're becoming a new being. The Gemara tells us in 2 locations, based on a pasuk in Tehillim, David HaMelech says, "Ki b'kor tzura lobim." God created the 2 worlds with the letters of Yud Hey of his name. Olam Haba was created with the spirituality letter Hey, and Olam Hazeh and the physical world was created with the spirituality of the letter Hey. When he added the Hey to Avram Avinu's name, it was just not a name change. There was a spiritual metamorphosis in Avram Avinu, and he says, the Medrash says, just as the Hey was necessary to create a new world, the whole world initially, to take you from Avram to be a new being, it takes no less than that. That same spiritual energy, which was needed to create an ex nihilo, you are at the beginning of a new ex nihilo. You're a new creation. Avram, when he had the hay, he became a new creation. But why did he become that, as we're saying the Midrash? Because initially he had done something which set that dynamic, that ultimately he will be able to achieve that level of change. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will give you renown, I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. You'll be a source of blessing. Let's see Rashi. When one travels, the 3 consequences of travel. A person becomes less prolific in terms of being able to father or child. There's a cost factor when you travel. When you pick yourself up roots, all the goodwill that you had in the initial location you no longer have, besides the cost. Umetes Hashem. Umetes Hashem, you no longer known. Therefore, he needed 3 brachos. Halolu, shefticho alabonim. He was told he would have a child. Alamoma, the finances. That's avarecho. Valashem, vavarecho bin momon. Gracious Rabbo. Sar macherim ze agado shmecho. This is important. I will make your name great. Harein mosef osal shmecho. I will add a letter to your name. What does the add sign? Just it doesn't mean just a name change. You know, you go to the bureau of whatever it is, the government, and you pay a certain fee. They'll agree to change your name to whatever you want. Shimcha Avrom. Until now, you Avrom. Mikan ve'elach Avrom. Now going forward, you Avrom. Avrom ole Ramach. Avrom numerically is Ramach, Keneged Rov Shalodam, which corresponds to the different parts of the person. Ve'ed Brocho. What does it mean? You will be the blessing. Havroch suits biyodecha. You're the one who has the ability to bless. Arach shavoy biyodi. Until now, I was the one who gave the blessings. Birachli l'odom v'noach. Now you have that ability to give the blessing, whoever you choose to bless. Now this is very important. The Eskol Godol, I will make you into a great nation. Zesh Omrim Elokei Avraham. Elokei Avraham. Avorecho, you will be blessed. Zesh Omrim Elokei Yitzchok. Agado Shmecho, the ultimate renown. Zesh Omrim Elokei Yaakov. What does that mean? We spoke about many times in the Chazal that until the Mishkan was built, where was the Shechina? Hein Merkava. Avram was the location of the Shechina. Yitzchak was the location of the Shechina. Yaakov was the location of the Shechina. That's Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Yaakov. You will merit that. You will be, Yitzchak will be, Yochel Yuchos Mekuram. Maybe the first bracha of the Shmon Esrei, we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mogen Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. Maybe we'll conclude the bracha with all of them. Talmud Loma ve'ei bracha b'chochos v'lo behem. You will only conclude with your name, not their name. Now, what's the understanding? So the answer is very simple. Because if not for Avram coming to recognize Hashem's presence, there wouldn't have been a Yitzchak, there wouldn't have been a Yaakov. It's only because, so therefore, b'chochos, everything's attributed to you. Okay? But it's even more. If we go, we understand. Why was Avram not able to father the child until the age of 99? Do you know why? Because he was not circumcised. Avram only became the Adam, so to say, that new classification of person only after he was circumcised. Yitzchak was conceived, was fathered by a person who had the status of pre-sin of Adam. Adam was without a foreskin. He did not have that level of association with that evil. Avram could only father the future patriarch of the Jewish people only once he was circumcised. Okay, that's the reason. So there can never be a Klal Yisrael unless you were able to achieve a level of internal perfection to remove that foreskin, which was an indication of the purity within himself. Therefore, everything is you. Because if you wouldn't have achieved that level of advancement, what would have followed couldn't have been. Because we read last week's reading, they left Ur Kasdim, they went to Choron. So he's telling him now, you left Ur Kasdim, Choron, now distance yourself even to a greater degree. Keep going. V'avorcha b'varchecho. It's a famous Orachaim over here. Orachaim HaKodesh. I will bless those who bless you. Umakalelcha or. And I will curse those who curse you. I will bless those who bless you. And I will curse those who curse you. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. So the Rav Kalatsky explains it this way. Hashem says, those who will bless you in the future will be blessed earlier. That's avorcha, I will bless those who will bless you. What does that mean? That means the ones who have blessed you already blessed. That since they're going to bless you, I'm already blessing them prior, even before they bless you. Why? A person who's blessed who gives a bracha, his bracha has great significance. So since he wanted Avram to be the ultimate beneficiary of the bracha, he said, I will bless those who will bless you. In the future, they'll already be blessed even before they bless you. As a result of that, when you're going to be blessed, you can be blessed from somebody who's already blessed. But I will curse those who curse you. If they curse you, they'll be cursed. They're not going to be cursed before. You know, it's interesting, by a bris of a child, you say, Zeh kotten gadol here. Right? That's what we say. That this cotton will be a gadol. What's the bracha? It means he's going to reach an age of adulthood. This minor, he'll be Zeh kotten gadol here. What's the gadol here? In the physical sense, what Zakot Gadol here means, with this circumcision, we've set a dynamic in place that this Koton, he has relevance to greatness. That's Zakot and Gadol here. We're ready at this moment, setting the future, what he's going to be. He's already receiving the blessing through this action that sets his future where he has the ability to go. Now, of course, it's choice. But at least it's within his purview that he could go there because he's circumcised. Oh, Yeshagodos Rabos, the many Medrashim, Zeb Pshuto. The simple understanding is, Odom Amalivno, take Avrom. When you bless your child, you say you should be like Avrom. That is the example of the blessed person. Through you, the Jewish people will be blessed. Every person will say, you should be like Ephraim and Menashe. They are the model of what you should be. They will say, you should be like Avram Avinu. But what's the Bishkos Adama? The families of the earth, not the families of the land. Mishkos Ha'oretz, Goyi Ha'rotzos. After the battle with the four kings, Avram was proclaimed and declared by the world, by all the nations of the world, as the Nasi Elokim. He's the Prince of God. Here, there's a battle between four kings and five kings. The four defeat the five. And Avram Avinu, as a single individual with a small group of people, he defeats all four, miraculously. And they understood that. When he was the victor, he was declared Nasi Elokim Atam Sochenu. You are the Prince of God. Now, we've mentioned many times, why is Adam called Adam? Because he's made from earth. That's why he's called Adam. So we mentioned Name and Moral, the animal and the undomesticated, domestic are also made from the earth. but they're not called Adam. So we explain the name of the Maral. What does Adama represent? It represents potential. You could have the most fertile earth, unless you cultivate it, it's a clump of earth. But if you address its potential, all life, unlimited life comes out of the earth. That's what a human being is. A human being is potential. Adama represents potential. Adam originally had infinite potential. When he ate of Deis Hadas, he actually forfeited that. Who assumed that infinite potential? To be able to cleave to God who's infinite. Only Klal Yisrael. So we took on that characteristic of Adama. Therefore, we're called Atem Kriyim Adam. When the nations see Avram Avinu as the role model, to be able to what? To be the source of all blessing, the Mishpos Adama. They're displaying the characteristics of Adama. It's not Oretz. Adama means because they see what the value of Avram's life regarding its potential. Therefore, they're displaying the characteristics of Adam, although they're not Adam. Therefore, they will be beneficiaries of who you are because they will use you as the role model. That's what I'm saying.